A guilty pleasure for me when it comes to movies has always been the fantasy genre. For better and for worse, from The Princess Bride and Conan the Barbarian to Deathstalker and Warcraft, I watched them all. It's surprising that it took me this long to discover the Mythica film series. Mythica is a series of fantasy adventure films from Arrowstorm Entertainment, numbering 5 in total, made with a modest budget but a lot of heart. You can tell it's very much a labor of love for the people involved. The story, to keep it relatively spoiler-free, follows the crippled slave Marek, gifted with the power of magic, as she journeys with her companions to become a great wizard, while simultaneously fighting to keep the darker forces of the world at bay. If this sounds like your run-of-the-mill fantasy epic, well, it is. Don't mistake me here. It's exactly the kind of thing Mythica aspires to be. The story is full of the familiar tropes, especially if you come from a tabletop RPG or video game background. You have worlds full of humans and elves, dwarves and orcs, and all manners of other creatures. Many reviews I've read say that the series feels like someone's D&D campaign turned into a movie. Well, considering the main character and her companions form the archetypal party of a wizard, fighter, cleric, and rogue, I honestly don't doubt it. But it's exactly in this already well-known world of tropes that Mythica finds its footing, and instead of using it as a crutch like a lot of other indie fantasy movies, it uses it as a stepping stool to push forth a mostly well-told, traditional story with likable characters who I grew to quite enjoy, and now that it's over, I'm somewhat sad to see them go. The best way to look at this saga is not as a first movie and its sequels. Instead, it's very evident that, much like the king of the fantasy film genre, Lord of the Rings, it's a complete narrative broken into several parts, with a strong villain presence played by the always delightful Matt Mercer of voice acting and Critical Role fame that gives our heroes something to work against and gives the plot in each film a good degree of suspense. Now, considering it is a modestly budgeted series, each movie was partially funded on Kickstarter, there is only so much you can expect. You have to keep your expectations in check. Many of the locations are minimalistic, relying on real-world locales such as forests, mountains, and caves, filmed all in Utah, though at times you get to see where the budget went, and we're greeted with nice set pieces in the various towns and places of civilization. Hammerhead's Inn, a mainstay in all 5 films, being my particular favorite. The effects are, well, hit or miss. Many of the creatures, such as elves, orcs, and undead, use practical effects to varying degrees of success, while others, like ogres and dragons, are all CGI, and they do clash with their real-world surroundings. Magic spells mostly utilize simple CGI effects, saving a mix of the practical and CGI for the big spells and incantations. As the films go on and the budget for them is increased, so does the quality of the effects and the cinematography, with the final film striking me as particularly well made for its budget. The acting from the main cast is quite good, with only a rough spot here or there, and really starts to shine in the second film, as the actors start to come into their characters more. Each of the 4 main heroes grow and change throughout the story, and they all have elements of realism to them, which I appreciated. They all have flaws, wants, and desires, and you can't help but root for them as you get to know them to pull through when they're in jeopardy. There are, of course, some dumb moments here and there. No movie is perfect, and the Mythica films are no exception. There is the occasional contrived story beat, useless character, or dropped plotline, but the lasting significance of these moments is minimal. Since the films are also episodic adventures in a longer journey, each one has what can feel like a villain of the week in addition to the main villain in them, some of whom are well performed and threatening, but then others who are a bit too cheesy. The thing that really makes Mythica worth the watch, in my opinion, though, is that it scratches that itch. The want and need for a good fantasy film that has a lot of heart behind it and a lot of passion put into it. Let me put it this way. By the end of the first film, I was interested. By the end of the second film, I was invested. And by the end of the third film, I was sold. This was the first time in years any film series came even close for me to capturing the magic of the adventure narrative that made the Lord of the Rings movies so much fun. And in many respects, it succeeds. So with all that said and done, if you like the fantasy genre, can look past lower budgeted movies and effects, and can appreciate the work and dedication that can go into even modestly budgeted films, then I recommend you try out Mythica. Especially if you like multiple different genres of fantasy. The first and second films are very much classic sword and sorcery, though the later films start incorporating elements of high fantasy, dark fantasy, and even steampunk. Each film is also relatively short, all of them clocking in under 2 hours. It gives them just enough meat to accomplish what they set out to do while also not feeling overly fat and bloated, and I like that a lot. I watched the Mythica series through Amazon Prime, where it's free if you have a Prime account, and I'm definitely going to purchase the series since I enjoyed it so much. Here's a test I propose. If you watch the first film, Mythica, A Quest for Heroes, and like it more than you dislike it, keep going, because each movie is significantly better than the last.